dropped your children off for summer visitation and then spent the next several days wondering, where are they? You text your ex asking where they're staying, no response. You ask for an address in case of an emergency, he says it's none of your business. Maybe he refuses to tell you what state they're in. Maybe he won't tell you who's traveling with your children. Maybe you learn from social media that they've crossed state lines or even left the country. If you've ever experienced that kind of fear, you are not alone. I'm Tiffany Lesnik, domestic violence survivor and family law attorney and founder of Live Free Legal. Every week, I help women across the country understand the legal system, recognize post-separation abuse, and prepare for family court with confidence. Today, we're talking about one of the most common and stressful summer custody issues. What are your rights when your ex refuses to tell you where their children are over the summer? We'll also discuss passports, international travel, what happens if your ex refuses to sign for a passport, and the kinds of travel provisions you should consider asking for in your custody order. Before we dive in, can I ask you a quick favor? If these videos have helped you navigate family court, understand post-separation abuse, or simply reminded you that you are not alone, please just take a second to like this video and subscribe to our channel. My goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers, and every single subscription helps us bring this life-changing legal education to more women who desperately need it. It costs you nothing, but it truly makes a difference. Thank you for helping us grow the Live Free Legal community. One of the biggest misconceptions parents have is believing that simply because they share custody, the other parent automatically has to tell them every detail about the vacation. Unfortunately, that's not always true. Many custody orders are surprisingly silent about vacation travel. They may say each parent gets a week or two of uninterrupted vacation, but the court order never explains what information has to be shared. That creates conflict. One parent simply wants to know, what city are my children in? Where are they staying? How can I reach them if there's an emergency? Who's traveling with them? How are they traveling? When will they be home? These are reasonable questions, but an abusive or controlling parent often sees those questions differently. They don't see an opportunity to co-parent. They see an opportunity to maintain control. Instead of answering, they may respond with, you don't need to know. It's my parenting time. Stop harassing me. Mind your own business. That's private. For many survivors of abuse, this isn't really about the vacation. It's about the fear of not knowing whether your children are safe and the feeling that someone is intentionally withholding information because they know it causes you distress. And that's why clear custody orders and parenting agreements matter. Healthy co-parents do not use uncertainty as punishment. They understand that emergencies happen, right? So your questions are completely reasonable. Children can get sick, parents can get sick. Flights are delayed, flights are canceled, cars break down, there are car accidents, there are weather changes. Responsible parents communicate. Abusive parents often communicate only when it benefits them. Sometimes they intentionally refuse to provide information because uncertainty itself becomes the punishment. Remember this, there is a huge difference between protecting your children's privacy and intentionally creating fear. If your custody order doesn't require travel information, that may be something to discuss with your attorney before the next vacation season. The best custody orders remove unnecessary conflict by setting clear expectations in advance. Now, one thing I will say you need to be mindful about is if you want very clear, detailed information in your custody order about flight information, destination information, where are you going, where will you be staying, how can I contact you, that's likely going to be reciprocal. So if he has to provide that information to you, you are likely going to have to provide that information to him. So if you have safety concerns, you don't want him to know where you are, maybe you have a protective order in place, Be careful with your drafting. Make sure that the language only applies to him and it doesn't apply to you. Otherwise, you'll have to inform him as to your location and your whereabouts. So that's just something to be thinking about. So let's talk about international travel, because international travel raises additional questions. Parents often ask me, can my ex take our child or our children out of the country without telling me? The answer depends on several factors, including your custody order, the laws that apply to your situation, and whether consent is required for travel involved. International travel presents unique concerns because returning children from another country can become far more complicated than resolving a disagreement over domestic travel. That doesn't mean international travel should never happen or can't happen. Many families travel internationally every year without any issues. But if there is a history of coercive control, threats to keep the children, repeated violations of court orders, or other significant concerns such as taking the children out of the country for the purposes of keeping them there permanently and not returning them to the United States, and especially if it's a country that's a non-Hague Convention country where it could be very difficult to get your children back to the United States, those facts may become important when asking the court to consider as a history of coercive control, threats to keep the children, repeated violations of court orders, or other significant concerns such as a parent threatening to take the children out of the country for the purposes of keeping them out of the country on a permanent basis, especially a non-Hague Convention country where it can be very difficult to get your children back to the United States. Those facts may become important when asking a court to consider appropriate travel safeguards. Every situation is different, which is why individualized legal advice is so important. Another question I hear all the time is, who should keep the children's passports? There isn't one universal answer. Some parents each keep a copy of travel documents while one parent holds the passport. However, when dealing with a coercive controller, my general recommendation to my clients is that they should be the ones keeping the passport. If you have a controller keeping the passport, even if you have a provision in the court order that says he has to provide it within 15 days prior to travel, there's a good likelihood he's not going to provide that passport when required. And you're not going to have time to file a motion for contempt and get that motion for contempt calendared and heard before a judge before your trip comes rolling around. So there's a very good likelihood you're going to miss flights, your vacation or your trip's going to be ruined if he's withholding that passport. So my general recommendation to my clients is, if you have an abusive ex, try to be the parent that holds those passports. Get those provisions written in your parenting agreement or your court order that you are going to be the holder of the passports, and in the event he travels, you can provide that passport to him prior to him leaving on his trip. You can put provisions in a custody order that require passports to be exchanged only for scheduled travel, and then you can be the holder at all other times. Other custody orders require that passports be stored in a neutral location, so such as a parenting coordinator's office or an attorney's office, or exchanged within a certain number of days before and after an international trip. And then if that's not done, you can file a motion for contempt. The important thing is that the process is clearly defined. Whenever expectations are left unclear, conflict usually fills those gaps. So what do you do if he won't sign the passport? One of the most frustrating situations is when a parent refuses to cooperate with obtaining a child's passport, because generally speaking, the federal government is going to require both parents to sign the application for a child's passport. Absent you having a court order that says you have sole legal custody, or you have the right to authorize application or authorization for a passport without the other parent's consent. Many times his refusal to sign the passport has nothing to do with safety of your child, even though he's going to probably use that as an excuse. It's simply another way to exercise control over you. Moms a lot of times will ask, can the court make him sign? In some situations, yes, courts may have the authority to address an unreasonable refusal or enter orders that allow necessary travel, but the outcome depends on the facts of the case and the applicable law. Again, if you have a parent that's threatening to take a child out of the United States for the purposes of keeping them permanently out of the United States and locating to a foreign country on a permanent basis, that might be a little bit more of a challenge for you to get the court to approve that type of travel. If you're facing an issue with international travel, if you're facing an issue with obtaining a passport, bottom line is don't wait until a vacation is already planned. Address it early. The sooner these issues are raised, the more options you may have. You want to protect yourself before the next vacation. If you are negotiating or modifying a custody order, consider discussing whether it should address issues like advance notice of vacation dates, travel itineraries, flight information, hotel or lodging information, emergency contact information, expected return times, and procedures for exchanging passports or obtaining passports. And then whether international travel requires written consent or additional court approval in your circumstances. Anytime we're talking about getting written consent from parents, be mindful when dealing with a coercive controller that if you have to obtain his approval or consent, he's very likely to say no. So just be mindful of those provisions. Although you may say yes because it's in the best interest of your child to go on a vacation, to travel, he's likely to say no in order to control you. So be careful about those kind of clauses. I think that the smarter option is to say, this is what's allowed unless you guys mutually agree to something else, right? That's like a back door, that you can mutually agree to something else, but you do have that clause in there that gives you some kind of guaranteed outcome. Clear expectations reduce misunderstandings and often reduce litigation. The more specific your court order or parenting plan, the fewer opportunities there are going to be for manipulation. If there is one thing I want you to remember today, it's this. Wanting to know where your children are is not the same thing as trying to control the other parent. Protective parents ask questions because they love their children. Controlling parents often refuse to answer because they know uncertainty creates anxiety. Those are two very different things. If today's webcast gave you practical tools or brought you peace of mind, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. We're on a mission to reach 1,000 subscribers so we can expand our reach and continue providing free legal education to survivors and protective parents across the country. Every like, every comment, and every subscription tells YouTube that this information matters. Hey, and leave a comment below. Have you ever been denied basic information about where your children were during summer visitation? Your story may encourage another mom who feels completely alone. Thank you for spending time with me today. I am Tiffany Lesnik, survivor and domestic violence attorney with Live Free Legal. Remember, knowledge is power, preparation is protection, and you do not have to navigate family court alone. I'll see you next week, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here at Live Free Legal on YouTube. See you then.